What's going on, guys? I'm Tyler, and I'm here to let you know that The Invisible Man is no perfect movie. I thought it'd be cool. I'm sorry. So anyways, The Invisible Man centers around a woman played by Elisabeth Moss who has recently fled her wealthy but abusive ex-boyfriend, and weeks later he appears to have committed suicide and left a decent amount of his fortune to her. But almost immediately afterwards, she begins to become attacked repeatedly by someone out of thin air who she can't see, and she begins to suspect that her ex-boyfriend has made himself invisible. And Here's the thing, I'm gonna get my biggest problem with this movie out of the way first, because I legitimately think this is a good movie, but there's something about the writing, not just for this movie, but for others that I want to point out. Now, I was excited to see this to the point where I closed my eyes during all the trailers. I'm doing that a lot more with horror movies because I don't want to predict the scares that are going to happen. I'm doing that with A Quiet Place 2 and The New Mutants because I still haven't seen any promos for either one of those movies, and I'm not going to until I see the damn movie because I want to be scared by it. But here's the thing. With that, you can still hear the dialogue throughout and still piece together bits of the story. And the bits that I pieced together for this movie that I was really worried about and kind of came true was this is yet another psychological horror story where where the main character has to prove to everyone that she's not crazy, that something out of the ordinary is going on, and of course nobody believes her. They turn on her, they hate her, and completely cut her out of their lives, and I'm not a fan of those kinds of stories because of one specific thing. In movies like this, and in this one in particular, they make it very clear from the get-go whether or not she's imagining it or not. And in this movie, it makes it clear during the first scene whether or not she's imagining it. I won't spoil it for you, but it becomes pretty clear throughout the entire movie. And when you know that outcome, and you see characters not realize it or just ignore it altogether over and over and over again, it becomes really repetitive and kind of takes the fun out of it too. It reminded me a lot of Steven Soderbergh's Unsane that came out a couple of years ago. It was clear as day whether or not she was imagining things or not, but the movie acted like it was still a mystery. Invisible Man is a much better movie than Unsane, but the fact that you gave us these answers makes several scenes feel repetitive and just unentertaining, especially during the middle portion of this movie. And I know there are a lot of people who are going to say, well, this stuff happens to women like this in real life. They get ignored. They get completely shut out from other people because of horrible things that happen to them. And believe me, I understand that. It's in the news almost every day now, and I agree, it's wrong that it happens. But we're watching a work of fiction where we already know what the outcome is going to be, and we already know that we agree with the lesson. People who disagree with the lesson are not going to change their minds after they watch this. And so real-life scenarios don't always play out well in fictional works, especially if we can see what that outcome is going to be. I 100% agree that there are women who are mistreated on a daily basis, and they shouldn't be. That doesn't always mean that you have to say that every 10 minutes to get that point across. The people who are going to receive that point and are going to respond to it the way you want it to already agree with you on the message. That's really all I'm trying to say. Okay, minor tangent out of the way. I said I like this movie, and I really do. Starting with the fact that this is probably Leigh Whannell's best work directing-wise so far. Maybe even best writing-wise so far. And this is only his third movie as a director. He has clearly evolved from Saw and Insidious to the point where he doesn't rely on loud jump scares anymore. There's maybe like one false alarm throughout the entire movie, and that's it. The intensity from this movie and the atmosphere comes from starting off a shot in one particular area and then slowly panning the camera there and back to make us feel paranoid whether this invisible man is there, whether or not anything's there at all, and if so, have they arrived yet, or are they just waiting for something to happen? The music never feels abrupt, it never feels loud, it slowly rises and fades when it needs to build intensity. And I gotta say, this is probably one of Elisabeth Moss's top 3 performances. We never actually see the abuse that she suffered before the events of the movie, but You can see through her expressions and her body language and her quiet, slow line delivery that she's clearly traumatized. I love the fact that she's not a victim who has to realize that her relationship was toxic. That's a huge change of pace. We need to see more women, more female characters like that in movies to get the point across. And she never felt over the top. Instead of constantly screaming, she does scream here and there, but those moments felt earned. A lot of the more intense moments for her rely on her observing an area in silence and listening as closely as she can to discover whether or not she's being followed, whether or not she's being stalked. And those moments had my heart gripping, it had me gripping my fists. I was constantly engaged by her performance. And as for the Invisible Man in the movie, the effects are absolutely flawless. When we experience Elisabeth Moss being held up by the throat in the air, seemingly by another person, these scenes are drawn out with very little cuts whatsoever to show that these are real actors in real environments using real props to fight back and trace down the possible Invisible Man without using any CGI whatsoever. In fact, I'm sure the effects for the Invisible Man require someone wearing like a green screen suit or a full body motion capture work, but it's incredibly seamless, and you can tell during some moments where she's being tossed in the air or dragged around that it probably is her on a wire, but again, it's her doing her own stunts, interacting with a real environment. We need to see more movies like this where we can see A-list actors are willing to do their own stunts. And it's great to see that from her, especially considering she has like very little background in any action movies whatsoever. The themes can be a little overstated sometimes, but they are important themes to address, and in general, they are well explored thanks to Leigh Whannell as a director, Elisabeth Moss as the lead actress, and the effects team for creating a horror movie that feels above average, especially for modern studio movies. And for those reasons, I'm going to give The Invisible Man a 4 out of 5. Guys, thanks as always for watching. If you've seen The Invisible Man, feel free to let me know in the comments below what you thought of it, and be sure to like and subscribe. Take care.